All right, good morning, guys. I'm Blake Williford. I'm a PhD candidate at Texas A&M, and I work on helping people learn to draw by using gameplay and artificial intelligence. So, let me go full screen, sorry. Okay, so I focus on a form of drawing that's more commonly referred to as sketching. And sketching you can think of as more as a language of visual communication. So everybody has drawn a map for someone, or everybody has sketched an idea on a napkin, like the next $1 million idea. So it's a really practical form of drawing, and it's a very useful and valuable thing to know. But what you see, and if I had a dollar for every time I've heard someone say this, I'd be a rich man. I mean, everybody always says this: I can't even draw a straight line. And the issue is that there's a lot of issues with learning to draw for people. They have low confidence, they have a low motivation to practice. Those two things are very closely tied together. There's also access issues as far as certain communities don't really value the arts as much and don't give you much opportunities for formal art education. And it's also a mentality issue. I mean, children tend to kind of stop doing these creative activities like drawing and coloring and so forth. And as they get older, they start to kind of believe that they're not creative, which is of course not true. So the main research questions around this were, first of all, what motivates individuals to practice sketching? And how do those motivations change as their skill level increases? The other question was, how can we use sketch-based gameplay to motivate individuals? So the first thing we did was we interviewed 14 industrial design students from Georgia Tech, along with 4 design professionals. These are people who are doing design professionally or teaching design. And we asked the participants to self-identify their skill level. We conducted grounded theory on this data. And 4 categories or themes emerged: achievement, competition, communication, and creativity. So I'll show you this. Now, this isn't a super quantitative model, but it gives you a kind of general sense of how these things change, right? So when you're a novice, you're very much motivated by good feedback from the teacher and having a sense of that your drawings are good, getting a pat on the back. But then as you get more at an intermediate level, you start hearing things like, oh, I like a little bit of friendly competition. I like to be better than my peers. Or I like to cooperate with others on ideas. I'm kind of more open to sharing my sketches with people and that kind of thing, collaborating. And then lastly, as you get to the most advanced level, as you get really more professional, it's not about any of these extrinsic things anymore. It's all about, what can you really do with drawing and sketching? Can you be creative? Can you work well with others and create new ideas? And some of you who probably know about self-determination theory would know that it is similar to this. It's actually maps really well to it, right? In self-determination theory, you're initially ego-driven, kind of. You're looking for things that feed your ego and are extrinsic. But then as you develop the skill, you start to be more motivated by intrinsic things because you value the skill more. So then we wanted to do a little case study of a couple of approaches that we've explored. Now this first one, we just took this classic exercise that industrial design students do where they connect dots, and they basically, they do this. We give them a little bit of feedback on their accuracy. So you could call this sort of a gamified exercise. And you'll see here at the end that you get a little bit of feedback on your performance here. There you go. So that was a 3 stars. Not too great, but decent. The other approach we explored was more of a game. Now, if you were at the 2017 Chi Play, you might remember this. This got first place in the student game design competition. So thank you, everyone who was part of that. It was the jury award, so it was actually an outside industry professionals rated that. And you see what we're doing here is we're kind of having the same exact exercise, but it's a little more stealthy, right? You're not really thinking of it as an educational thing. You're thinking of it as building bridges for this character, right? So we kind of wanted to see what's the difference between those two approaches in terms of how they're motivating people, right? And so what we did was we put it in high school, we put it in Georgia Tech in a sketching course. There's 150 students, all different ages and genders. The participants had access to both prototypes, right? So they could basically do either of them. And it was deployed in a very naturalistic manner in the sense that we didn't want to like force the teachers to use it in a certain way. We wanted them to teach how they teach, and then here's a tool for you that you can use. And what we found, I mean, we thought that the Zen sketch would actually be more popular, but it turned out that was only true among the high school students. They seemed to like Zen sketch a lot more, and you see a uptick in October for them because that was when it was deployed there. But as far as the rest of the students, it was definitely the gamified line lesson, the first one, that was more popular. There was a lot more lines practiced in that. What you see here in this chart is the fact that students would practice the lines in these sort of bursts. So these bubbles are encoding the amount of lines that students were practicing. And what that suggests is that people are playing these games multiple times, right? They're trying to improve their score. And that's the point, right? That's the point of gameplay, is that if you can motivate people to keep practicing through the game mechanic and through the high score and so forth, then that's a powerful thing, because then you're doing this sort of exercise that would otherwise be a little bit boring, turning it into something fun. But what was interesting too is that only 26 of the 150 students accounted for nearly 64% of the 25,000 lines practiced. And so that suggested that basically only a small minority of the students were really competitive and were driven by that competitive aspect of Zen Sketch, of having the high score in the leaderboard. Then we kind of followed up with some individual students. Like this was a student who played it 58 times, Zen Sketch. And that was the most of any student. And then she said, I was trying to get the top score. Turns out she never did, so that's a shame. But you can see here that in terms of the metrics of her line work, she was able to keep the precision and smoothness high while over time kind of trending her speed upward, getting a little faster. This student was a little bit different. They played it 14 times, and they ended up kind of slowing down a little bit. They ended up saying, okay, I need to be a little more precise. And in the process of being more precise, they slowed down a little bit. Now, that's a common trade-off, right? It's kind of like Fitts' law. So that's actually kind of the desired effect that we wanted to see through the game mechanic. So some of the takeaways, it's pretty consistent with the motivation framework in the sense that, a minority of the students who were actually competitive were the ones that were engaged by that competitive aspect of Zen Sketch. And it was a group of mostly novice students. So it kind of makes sense. I think another thing is you can apply this motivation framework to non-digital games. I happen to focus on digital, but there's all kinds of cool exercises that people do in terms, things like sketch aerobics, where they stand up and they have big sheets of paper. And there's all kinds of different activities you can do to motivate students that's not necessarily digital. And then lastly, I think other domains, like such as music, would have a similar sort of progress of motivations among skill levels. I mean, they would have their own nuances, but as you can imagine, any novice in music also kind of wants to have some validation and some sense of achievement at first before they can then start being motivated to create their own songs and work with others in a band and so forth. So with that said, the mission I'm really interested in is that anyone can learn to draw. I really do believe that, and that's what I'm after with this work. And so I want to share a few exciting things with the community here to wrap up. One is Sketch Sharp. This is an open source framework that I've developed for sketch recognition in Unity. This can allow a bunch of people to make any sketch-based game you want, and it kind of makes it a little easier to it gives you a better starting point than I had. And I want to give that to the community of developers who want to work on this kind of stuff. I've also worked on a spiritual successor to this game called Zen Lines. We actually had a few people try it the other night at the party, like some play testers, and they seemed to really enjoy it, so that was fun. That's rebuilt in Unity, and it's much more robust, and I'm looking forward to getting that out to everyone pretty soon. Lastly, Sketchtivity is our learning platform that we've developed in the lab. We're going to have an open beta coming for that as well, and that gets into a lot of other sketching fundamentals, like perspective and so on. So I'm really excited to get these things out to people finally. So with that said, please do stay connected and stay in touch, and I will open it up for questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I imagine that would be quite useful to learn other kind of drawing activities as well, like curved lines and
Absolutely,
other things.
yeah. And we do focus on those, but what was cool about this was we wanted to take a little microcosm of drawing and kind of compare just a simple exercise like that, a couple of different approaches to gamification, and then the learnings from that can then be extended into sort of other activities. So.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions?
Gabriel Chimolino, Queen's University. Because you mentioned Fitts Law, I'm wondering, did you measure players' throughput, and did exposure have any effect on it?
Say it again? Throughput?
Yeah, the throughput, the actual information from drawing lines. Perhaps they drew more quickly, more accurately. Did you?
Yeah, so what we do is we actually take in the pixel coordinates of the strokes on the device. That's how we can get these metrics like accuracy and the smoothness of the lines and the speed. In our first paper from 2017, we do describe a little bit about that and how we do that. Does that answer your question?
So what was the measure for how well they drew the lines?
It's kind of all three of those things together because like in design sketching pedagogy, you tend to sort of want to draw quickly but also accurately. And it allows you to sort of rapidly come up with concepts and ideas. So you really, all three of those metrics are things that you want to be good at in that particular style of drawing. Now, if you're doing some kind of fine art or some kind of representational drawing, it may be completely different. You may be drawing things like textures and so on. But this is more for sort of basic line work. So,
I think there was another question at the back.
Shringi Kumari, University of York.
Hi.
London. So maybe I'm not really getting the game so much here. So in Zen Sketch, the gamified part is in the score based on the accuracy of the lines. Did you also think about using the slope as the mechanics for adding the game element of it?
What do you mean by slope?
The players are drawing and connecting the dots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And based on the accuracy, the score is changing from what I understood, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But did you think of actually using the accuracy of the slope or accuracy of the line in the mechanics of or the physics of the traveling person on those slopes or lines?
I mean, it is like that was one of those things that was sort of tricky. I mean, yeah, what it is the accuracy. He loses health. I mean, this is described in that former paper, but he basically loses health if you aren't drawing accurately. And then likewise, if you're drawing slowly, you miss bonuses and things like that. And if you draw lines that aren't smooth, that he can also fall off and stuff like that. So those mechanics are embedded into the game. And there's also bonuses and so forth, where if you can get all three, accuracy, smoothness, speed, you'll get kind of a perfect bonus. And that starts to kind of, shoot your score up. And so that kind of adds to the arcade aspect of it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So more like extrinsic gamified rewards than the... Okay, I see the point, because you're also falling off and stuff. Thank you. That was really interesting.
Sure. Yeah, that video, I tried to do a screen capture video, and it was with my mouse, and so it didn't get a good video. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, thank you, Blake. That was excellent.
Thank you.